Okay, hearing no corrections, the minutes from the November meeting are approved as written. So we will move on to our next item of business, which is a report from President Key.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie. I appreciate your leadership through this time. And I will say to everyone, we are finishing the semester. This is the last week, as we know. And I really appreciate the diligence and the hard work of our faculty. And I'm just not saying that. I really do, because I know how hard everyone has worked and I know how difficult it's been. I taught an in-person course this semester myself, and all of a sudden I discovered that this first time I've taught undergraduates in 40 years, all of a sudden I discovered I had to correct papers, and my admiration for you grows daily because I've been sitting here diligently doing this. I'm going to let the provost talk about a number of the things. I just want to make a couple of notes. First of all, the vaccine will soon be available, both the Pfizer and the Moderna, and they'll be available in the state. The FDA may approve the Pfizer one on Thursday. We may get it as soon as this coming week. Saying that, it will of course be distributed according to those who really do need it, our healthcare workers, others. But by the second term, or by the second quarter of next year, which is May or so, everyone in this state should be able to be vaccinated if they wish. And I'm just going to say this to all of my colleagues. I would hope everyone would take a vaccine. I think it is an important. I think it's an important healthcare opportunity. I think it's also as critical because of the fact that we are in the people business, and I know that some people may have some fear about taking the vaccine. I don't. I have volunteered to do it on television in front of everyone if I need to, because I do think that it's critical. But I do hope you'll all know that there will be some opportunity to return to a more normal schedule sometime next year, and we're looking forward to that. The Senator Joe Manchin, as you know, broke the logjam in Congress, and it looks as if they are coming toward a stimulus package, not nearly as robust for higher education as we would like, but it is much better than nothing. And that will certainly help us in terms of our bottom line, and help us in terms of some of the issues that we're challenged by in terms of cost and the dedication we've had to the pandemic. But again, let me just remind you that nothing is certain. As you know, there was $1.5 trillion difference between the Senate and the House, and to say that they can close that gap is not necessarily so. And of course, we're still in the middle of a very toxic political environment. Not knowing what that means, I think, is something that we're trying to figure out. But anytime you get a chance to thank Senator Manchin and Senator Capito, because she's been very involved, I would really appreciate your doing so. Our state budget is precarious but stable. I think that's the best way to say it. As you know, with the openings and the closing, with the economic recovery, which was going great guns, which was actually a V recovery, it has slowed dramatically. And we just don't know how this is going to impact state resources. Obviously, we are very hopeful that our governor and our state legislature will continue to view the university as a priority, and we're certainly on the prowl now to talk with everyone who will speak with us about what our goals are, what we're trying to achieve, and the importance of the university, particularly in this time of the pandemic. Finally, I'll just say to you, a lot of the budgetary issues that we face, which are faced by every institution, really are really determined by us. if we continue to attract great students, and we continue to make those students feel needed and wanted, if we continue to teach well, even as we're doing it from distance or however we're doing it, if we continue to nurture them on an individual basis, as much as you can reach out, as much as you can contact them, that will make all the difference in the world. Because in the end, the future of our university now is dependent on us being an institution that does commit itself to its students, and that our students view this as a place in which our faculty and our staff are very dedicated to their success. It is, there's this reality. There's many more seats than there are students. People are out there in many institutions cutting everything they possibly can, including salaries, in order to be able to be competitive to grab these students. We have been very fortunate in the fact that we've been prudent in all the things that we've done. But right now, we all have a common cause, and that is to have another robust semester to make certain that our retention rates remain high, and that we get our students back and get them here and healthy, and that we all remain healthy and engage ourselves. Saying that, Natalie, I'm not certain that I have anything else to add at the moment, but certainly I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for President Gee?
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we will hear from Provost Greene.
Thank you, Natalie. Good afternoon, everyone. And yes, we are wrapping up our crazy COVID fall. Today, of course, is the first day of our online finals, and finals end on Friday and grades are due on Monday. So indeed, we have almost made it. And I want to echo what President Gee said and just say how much I appreciate your hard work and dedication and patience this semester, and particularly your patience with our students who, we hear a lot from the students and their parents, and they really are struggling. This has not been the semester that they signed up for, nor has it been for you. But, for some of these students, it's their first time in college, and it's been difficult at best. So again, I appreciate all that you have done to make this semester, as workable and bearable as possible for our students. And we know that it has been very stressful on you as well. I want to remind everybody that there will still be testing through December, COVID-19 testing for the community and for faculty and staff. And if you would, are interested in that, just to go to the, the COVID University website, and it has the more limited hours. But again, we are offering testing this December. Our commencement, the university commencement, will be held virtually on Saturday, December 19th at 11 a.m. It is pre-recorded, so it will be on the web, and each college has its own individual ceremony with some common elements, including a commencement speech by Brad Smith, who will be inspiring our students. Of course, we're looking ahead to spring. So some thoughts about spring. First of all, we do have our plans, as you know, to start on January 19th after Martin Luther King Day. It's a week late, so we are eliminating spring break as a result of that. At this point, we have our configuration, and it's about 60% online, and the rest either hybrid or face-to-face. We're hoping that we're going to be able to continue as planned. Our healthcare experts and everyone is saying that we've got a dark winter ahead before the clouds lift with the vaccine. So we'll have to see. We'll be watching and monitoring the situation constantly, and working with our healthcare experts to determine if we have to make any changes. But right now, the plan is to be back in our limited on-campus capacity on the 19th of January. last Wednesday, the Student Government Association or Student Government voted on 2 actions that could potentially impact fall and spring. And one has to do with the pass-fail option, and the other has to do with wanting more days of non-instructional time so that they can have students can have a break for mental health. And so I wanted Evan Witters to share with you kind of what those resolutions are and kind of where we're falling right now from the provost office.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? So thanks, Marianne. Yes, these 2 motions came in last week, later in the week, from the SGA. The first one was to reinstitute the high pass, pass fail option this semester for fall, but also for spring 21. And I suppose that makes sense since we didn't have anything that, you know, it was a difficult fall for everyone, but there wasn't anything sort of a dramatic pivot like happened in the spring. So the argument is that whatever, you know, mental health and adjustment and online issues students are having this semester, they're also likely to have next semester. What they requested would be a retroactive implementation of it. So grades would post, and then students would be able to go look at their grades and basically decide to change the ones that they wanted to pass, fail, high pass, pass, fail, or to leave them as letter grades. That does have the advantage of sort of getting rid of buyer's remorse, which was pretty severe the first time around. On the other hand, it does allow you to leverage the system, and doing it this late takes away what I thought was one of the main reasons for having pass fail, which was to sort of take some stress off students. They've been stressed all semester, but you know, obviously if we change now in the middle of finals, that would only give people a few days of comfort probably. After a lot of discussion in the provost's office and with faculty senate and other people, we're recommending that we do not implement pass fail for fall or spring semester for a number of reasons. To me, the most important reason is the thousands of withdrawals from courses we've had already. So that's thousands of students who have their transcript marked with a W from withdrawing with courses. If we do pass fail now without sort of a incident or a turning point that leads us in that direction, the question would be, what do we do with all these students who withdrew from a class but would not have, or claim they would not have, if they had the pass fail option? We're also, in my opinion, sort of leaving advisors out to dry a little bit, because they suggested to students that they would not be able to do pass fail following our guidance. And now that they are, it's sort of a question of, you know, why didn't we do it in the first place? Well, the reason we didn't do it in the first place was because our peers aren't doing it for the most part. I looked at about 30 what I would call peer universities, and only 5 of them are implementing a form of pass fail this semester. All 30 of them did for spring semester. So we would be in a minority if we did pass fail. And in fact, none of the Big 12 schools, at least the last time I checked, had done pass fail, sort of a sweeping pass fail, which would really, again, would really put us out there. And the third reason that I'm reluctant to do pass fail is the standard one of this would make our students less competitive in graduate and professional school. That tends to be the sort of boilerplate answer for all the other institutions, is that really we're undermining our ability to have our students evaluated against other students. And so if one student applies to medical school with a number of pass fails on their record for STEM classes, and this didn't occur in spring, which is sort of a one-off semester, then how do you compare those 2 students fairly? One who went to a school that didn't allow pass fail and one that did not. So with sort of the input from many of our health sciences academic leaders, we've decided that it would be really difficult for them to implement pass-fail again and keep their standards in place. So I know that that's not a decision, well, it hasn't been completely made, but it is what we are leaning and what we're inclining towards is not having pass-fail. As far as the extra mental health days that were requested, that would be one day probably in March, one day for finals. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's actually very difficult to do because we're moving the week back, we're moving instruction, start of instruction back a week. We're right at the limit of the minimum amount of days we can have according to our accrediting body, HLC, and also the Department of Education to give out financial aid. We have a day in there, which we were saving for a snow day. However, you know, if the SGA and the Faculty Senate feels like we should turn that day over to a mental health, which isn't my terminology, it was the students' terminology, day, I think we can support that. The other thing they're asking is that we give them a dead day between the end of instruction and finals, and that would move the end of finals back to probably early on Saturday. So there would be finals on Saturday if we did that. There's simply no other way to make things fit with grade processing and financial aid processing at the end of the semester. So that's where we are. Sorry that went a little longer than I intended.
Thank you, Evan. I want to say that Evan said we're leaning against the pass-fail option. We are very much leaning for the additional 2 days of non-instruction. We feel that the students, they came in good faith. They have been, struggling. They made their requests in a very reasonable way, and we want to give them something. And so we feel that giving those extra days is not nearly as disruptive as the pass-fail option, and we need to do something. So I guess what I would say to you is, if you have any major objections, let us know ASAP, because we are planning to move forward and most likely announce this early this week. Thanks so much, Evan. And also, I just want to share with you, it was brought to our attention, and we really did look into the possibility of changing the attendance policy to be more restrictive in the spring. We heard from several of you that and other faculty that it's been challenging with students coming in and out of the classroom, and you don't always know if they have a legitimate excuse. And so, we can really appreciate what that's like in the classroom. But I think at this point, what we do know is that our processes worked and we kept the classroom safe. And so we want to err on the side of public safety. And we feel that to change our attendance policy and to make it more restrictive, we stand the chance of students coming to class who might be sick, not feeling well, and worried about the repercussions of not coming to class. So for now, our plan is to stick with our original attendance policy, and also know that you as faculty have the ability that if a large number of your students are missing for a week, you can, for that week, go remote if that's what you need to do. So you do have some power over that. But yeah, we just feel like, advised by our health folks, that we should err on the side of public safety. So I just wanted to share that with you. Evan's going to talk a little bit later about spring registrations. It is important, I'm going to say in general, they are down. And we're concerned about that. And we've been reaching out to those students to figure out what the problems are. And we're continuing to do that, but Evan will talk about that. And then on the other side, winter intersession enrollments are up by about 10%. So, and we continue to get interest in those winter sessions. So, that's going on. International, just to let you know, study abroad, I know that there's some questions about, are we going to make a decision about summer study abroad? Some colleges have already made that decision regarding faculty-led trips. We know that we always have to make decisions early because of all the implications, having to book the trips and all of that. And so we're trying to figure out when would be the last date we could make a decision about that. You know, what we're thinking, if there's a vaccine, that, you know, certainly the second summer session would be more like, you know, probable than the first summer session. So we're kind of working on that. Also, I wanted to share that the Office of International Programs is offering virtual grants of $500 for faculty who are interested in incorporating virtual exchanges or interactions in their classes in the spring. And if you have any interest in that, you're supposed to contact Amber, who is our international person. So that's going on. Faculty support, the Teaching and Learning Commons is hosting 2 winter institutes in early January, and I believe that there's going to be a slide kind of throughout the meeting promoting it, but there are 2 sessions. There'll be one's in early January, one's in mid-January. The first session is about how to organize a course on learning management systems such as eCampus, and the second is on best practices for student engagement in synchronous and asynchronous courses. Our self-care in the time of COVID workshop was a huge success. We had 70 plus faculty that participated, and it's so popular that the Talent and Culture is now hosting 2 sessions for staff. So again, though, we recognize that there is a need for this, and that faculty self-care is very important. To date, we have processed, or we have approved 75 faculty accommodations under COVID and 58 non-ADA modification requests. So the large majority of faculty who requested accommodations were granted those accommodations. And I just want to say, you know, I don't necessarily want to toot our own horn, but we really try to accommodate as many faculty as possible. And, you know, some of our peers are not quite so accommodating, but we want to recognize folks who really feel that they cannot be in the classroom. And then finally, personnel issues. We are well underway with our law school dean search. We had 5 really excellent candidates, finalists, if you will, come to campus virtually over the past 2 weeks, give presentations, meet with groups. I think they did a really terrific job. The search committee is meeting on Friday, and we'll be discussing, I'll be meeting with them. And as well, there was a survey sent out to all sorts of people who interacted with the candidates, and we'll be looking at those results. And so it looks like we are probably going to have a really good law school dean when all is said and done. And then finally, on a very sad note, I don't know how many of you know this, but I did want to share that we lost Keith Bailey last week after his struggle with cancer. Keith was our dean of online programs, and just a really terrific human being. Any of you who encountered him or worked with him in any way, and he's left a real hole at the university. There'll be information coming out tomorrow about if you want to contribute to some of those causes that Keith felt very strongly about. At this point, we don't know anything about any kind of memorial service. I think with COVID, everything is up in the air, but we're hoping that we could do something in the spring when we can all get together and recognize his achievements and the contributions that he made to the university. And online right now, just so you know, it's in good hands. Tracy Beckley, who many of you deal with, who's the Assistant Dean of Teaching and Learning, and Julie Thalman, who is the Executive Director of WVU Online, are assuming many of Keith's duties. And we will hold off for a while in terms of doing a search. We want to step back and think a little bit more about what we need, but also just give us all time to settle with the news. So I think that is my report, and it was very long. Back to you, Natalie.
Questions for the provost or for the associate provost regarding the information that he provided on pass fail and the non-instruction days?
Or anything.
Natalie, there's several questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I see them. I'm just waiting for folks. It's the hand raised folks get to ask their questions first. So I do see one hand raised. Assad Davari, go ahead, please.
Assad Davari from Bickley campus. I'm just wondering if the virtual grant is applied to all campuses.
I think that it is. Amber, do you want to answer? Amber Brignoli? I think Amber's on this meeting. Well,
You might be an attendee and not a panelist.
Yes, she needs to be upgraded.
are
Can
you
you hear me
upgrading her? Are you upgrading her?
I've just unmuted her.
Okay. Hey, Amber. Amber?
Yes, any faculty member can apply for that grant. We've also had some staff inquire. In the past, quite frankly, we just didn't have the funds, but if a staff member has a really cool program, we've had some student orgs that say they want to do an event with a student org in, France or England. We will definitely entertain that.
Amber.
Thank you very much.
Other questions from folks who would like to just sort of speak their question? If not, I can move on to the ones in the chat. Okay, so the couple in the chat that have not been answered, there's one, let me see if I can find it. On when we'll know the exact days of non-instruction so we can plan our syllabi.
Yeah, so we'll make a decision in the next day or two, and it'll be announced.
Okay, and then this next one is from Dorian Williams. Since we are recommending not to institute pass fail, might there be a reminder or a plea to faculty for lenience, reasonableness given student stress levels when releasing final grades mentioned at a prior meeting? So a plea. So I've gotten somebody else reached out to me this weekend about this particular issue and student stress levels and their stress over grades. And so this comment seems to speak to the one that I received in that it's a kind of a plea for faculty to recognize that students are also stressed and to be perhaps more lenient in their grading.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Natalie. And I mean, certainly we've got a body of faculty here that can hear that, and whether we send a separate message or not, I think we've been communicating that, but we'll talk to our deans tonight and make sure that they communicate that through the colleges.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? I see. Is there a hand? Yes. Rose, go ahead.
Hi, Rose Casey from Eberly College. One of my colleagues reached out to ask, talking about student mental health and well-being. She's very worried about what kind of support might be available for students, knowing that hers are incredibly stressed and assuming that others are stressed too. She wonders in particular about what's going on with student support at the Caruth Center. I know this is something we've talked about before, but I think she was hoping maybe for some kind of update or statistics, or just getting a sense of how much support is available for students who need support from the Caruth Center, and in addition, anything else that the university is doing or ways it's using its resources to respond to this serious issue of student stress, and of course how that relates not just to individual well-being but also to student retention and persistence. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's something I really wish I had Corey Ferris on this call, the Dean of Students, because I think he could speak to I think more articulately about what the Carew Center's doing, how they are managing these requests, what we're also doing with our online service. I'm not sure, is anyone on my team, I don't know, Paul or Evan, feel like you could answer that a little better?
Mary Ann, I can give a little bit of information.
Sure, sure.
I know that we've added resources on the care team for individuals to work directly with students. And I can tell you that we still meet weekly and are successfully directing all students who need the help to Caruth Center. So Caruth is very active right now and is handling the load of students who are coming their way. We have, as you indicated, seen an increase in activity, not surprising with what students are going through this semester. But again, without being able to speak to specific details, we have increased resources to help with that increased traffic load. So I would say for students in particular, please continue to use the care team as the primary means for filtering students to the appropriate resources, and we will get them where they need to be.
Rose, we can actually, if it would be helpful, we could actually talk to our Dean of Students and provide you with some more specific data if you would like that.
I think that would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Yep.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
We do have a workshop plan from Tian Hawkins just for faculty development in the spring. It's February 9th, and that information will be going out. We're really aware of this time of year, but we're thinking also about spring and the back-to-back of courses with not a lot of time off. And so she'll be running a workshop, and we will record that and load it on the website as well and share it with faculty for those who aren't able to attend.
And that'll be on
February. I'm sorry.
The topic is
the mental health of our students, understanding and strategies for helping them.
That's great.
Like there's a question from Lisa D. Bartolomeo. Lisa, go ahead.
Not so much a question. I think I'm echoing. Okay. I think the Caruth Center, if you contact the Caruth Center, it's still echoing. Sorry.
Okay.
It might be somebody else, feedback from somebody else's mic.
Right.
Be sure. So if you're not speaking, just go ahead and mute yourself so that Lisa doesn't get that feedback.
Okay. Still muted. I'll type it in the chat.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions? Okay. So then we will move on to our next item of business, which is a presentation from the Associate Provost for Undergraduate Education, Evan Witters, and he'll be sharing information about our fall DFW rates. You ready, Evan?
Yes, thanks, Natalie. I'm going to share my screen here. This PowerPoint looks really intimidating and long, but I promise it is not either of those things. Natalie asked me to come and just present some numbers on how we're doing in terms of students right now. Not necessarily some of the things we were talking about mental health wise, but how many are enrolled, how they're performing academically as far as we can tell, and then how many of them have registered to come back in spring semester. So it's only 4 slides, well, 5 if you count this, but hopefully we can get through them pretty quickly. Feel free to ask questions though, because I'm not going to be able to, or even attempt to get into a lot of depth here. This is our census information. If you can see it, this is where we ended up in October 1st, which is our census date in terms of number of students. I apologize ahead of time to Potomac State and WVU Technology. I didn't include your numbers there. You can see them, but they're not in the totals. I just, for comparison with the next couple slides, I wanted to make it a little easier. But I do have your numbers. If you're interested in them, I can get them to you. You can see our breakdown here, again, where we were with the students we have this year. This includes graduate students, professional students. It includes high school students. and basically breaks those down by college. And, you know, first gen, there's some other demographics here, you know, identity, et cetera. So if you take a look at that and absorb it, again, I didn't have a lot of points to make on that, except it is here. I will note that our retention rate was pretty good, although we can always improve. We ended up with an 82% retention rate of first-time freshmen. Certainly with COVID, we were worried that that wouldn't be the case. However, as many of you know, our first-time freshman class was a little bit smaller than we wanted. The overall sort of result of a smaller class but better retention was that we ended up down about 2% in the number of undergraduates on campus on the census date, or where we were last fall. Okay, this information, there's a couple different types, but before I get to the chart, I guess I'll explain. So withdrawals from the semester are up about 20% over where they were last fall. Last fall, withdrawals from the semester are students who've dropped all their coursework. There's about 300 of them, 320, I think exactly, students who have dropped all their classes. And that's a worrying amount, but you know, given the circumstances, it's probably not as bad as some of us had feared. So although certainly there's room for improvement, it doesn't look like the sky is falling yet anyway. Transcript requests were down. We had fewer students, as far as we could tell, making a request for a transcript for the purposes of transfer. That's good news, but of course it also makes sense because not many schools are in a much better situation than we are. So, you know, if you wanted to transfer because you didn't like how we were dealing with COVID, there's not a lot of other places to go where you're probably going to get much more efficacy. DFW rates. Overall, our DFW rates, which most of you know are these were midterm grades, so submitted by instructors in weeks 7 and 8 for all students, all undergraduate students, grades of D, grades of F, and then we pull the grades of W, or students who've withdrawn from classes. This is compared to fall of last year. And as you can see, we had fewer registrations, which is the total number of classes that were registered for. However, DFW grades were up. Not a lot, thankfully, but still up, considering that the overall number of students was down slightly. More worrying to me is the fact that we had fewer D grades that were reported and significantly more F grades that were reported. So what does that mean? It just means that students didn't do as well, you know, at week 8 as they had the previous semester. This may be a result of move to online instruction, and maybe a result of just general COVID nastiness and other issues, mental health issues. We don't know, but certainly, you know, it's a little worrying. And then the withdrawal grades were actually lower. I think it's pretty flat if you consider we had fewer courses to withdraw from. And then congratulations to all the faculty out there. We've reached 90% reporting of DFW grades, which I think is excellent, especially when you consider all the colleges and schools are being surveyed here. Now, this is basically the same information, but it's for our freshmen. These are first-time freshmen, not freshmen overall. Again, you can see the cohort size there, last year versus this year. You can see the number of DNF midterm grades, pretty flat, although as we said before, they skewed a little lower this time, more towards the F than the D. The number of students who had at least one D or F midterm grade was about the same as normal. They come from all over the university, so they don't sort of hew to specific majors necessarily, but over 100 different majors had DFW grades, which probably isn't surprising. The number of students who had only one grade was about 20%, again, pretty flat with where we were. And then these, unfortunately, are students who have 4 or more DFW grades. And what we've seen with those students is often they don't recover, unfortunately. By the time they get, to that situation, they're not doing well. Many of them aren't really making the kind of social connections here we want them to make. Perhaps they are in financial duress, which is another thing that we see happens very much in students' first semester. They took on more financially that they can take. There may be stresses going on back at home. Interestingly enough, in my opinion, these sort of metrics are more a gauge of how students are doing overall than specifically academic performance. Because what we see is that actually the reason students don't return, they say, is more often because of poor fit or mental health or finance than it is what they view as their academic performance. So when we see students like these who have a lot of DF grades, it tends to be a reflection of everything else that's going on in their lives. Oftentimes they're simply just not going to class, fortunately. Last chart here, this is what Marianne alluded to, and this is what's worrying us the most right now. This is our current enrollment in terms of students who are registered for spring semester. And what we're seeing here is that students haven't registered in the amount that we would like to for spring yet. Now, there's some good reasons for this. One is that registration was 2 weeks late. Another was that we had, because we moved registration back, it ran into a maintenance period for DegreeWorks and STAR and some of the other student systems while they were upgrading. And so it may have been a little harder for a student to see advisor and get advised last week than would normally be the case. But we'd really like to encourage everyone and when you're contacting with your students, please let them know, register. To that end, we pulled off all the academic holds that we could. We pulled off all the student conduct holds that we could. So if you had a student conduct hold for a minor offense, if you had a hold for not being COVID tested at the proper time, if you had a hold maybe for not showing up for random COVID testing, since the students weren't here right now anyway, we took those holds off and messaged the students with the idea that by removing the holds, we could at least remove some of the barriers to registration, hopefully get students registered. We know when they register, they come back. When they don't register, some come back, some don't. I will say that one thing to note is about 8% of students don't come back every fall to spring. So no matter how well we do, even though we want every student to come back, we normally lose about 900 to 1,100 students between fall and spring who don't retain, don't persist, we call it, and stay at the university. The last thing really doesn't go with that, but I thought it was general interest, just so you could see the difference between last spring in terms of modality of courses and this spring. You can see that last spring, about 18% of our students were what we call mixed campus, which means they had at least one online class. You can see that 74% were all on campus and 9% were purely online with no on-campus classes. If you look at our current number, 61% of students, which surprised me a little bit, it seems a little higher than I thought, have at least one on-campus class probably, but they're mixed campus in some way. Only 5% of students somehow managed to achieve a fully on-campus schedule, and then 1/3 of our students are online. And that is it. So I'll put this away and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so I see a hand up from Asad Davari.
Asad Davari from Berkeley campus. Do you have similar study or numbers for the Berkeley campus? If you do have, I'd really appreciate it if you could share it with us.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have the registration numbers and we have the census numbers. I don't know if we have your midterm grade numbers. That may be something that you need to look to your registrar for. we only pull those for the Morgantown campus, but I know you have access to them and have been actively messaging the non-registered students.
Other questions? Comments?
So just so you know, we are actively messaging these students. We have a communication plan, and we started it about 3.5 weeks ago. This included outreach by email. Last week we did outreach by text, and this week we'll be doing outreach by phone. So, you know, emailing, texting, calling, we're doing everything we can to address any issues students have, and also try to nudge them in the direction of just, you know, getting that advising hold removed and registering for courses.
I see 2 additional questions. So Shine 2 is first.
Yeah, this may not be an Evan question, but it might be a Rob Alsop question. I'm just wondering how these numbers might affect the strategy that the university had for tuition and our budget. Does it change things dramatically, or are things basically as predicted?
Let me just answer, Shine. If the numbers don't pick up, it will definitely impact our budget. The degree to which it impacts our budget, what the ramifications are, at this point we don't have that information, but we are, you know, really watching closely. And I know that Rob is coming to the faculty senate meeting in January, and I know he'll have an update on the financial picture. So yes, it's one of those things where we really do have all hands on deck. We're trying to figure out if there's something going on, or if it's the fact that registration was late, the fact that there were new holds put on students' accounts. I mean, there's some things that are different this year, but yeah, we're very concerned about it.
Thank you.
There's another question from Heiko. Heiko, go ahead.
Yes, hello. Can you all hear me? This is Heiko Tahaseborg from the World Languages Department. I was just wondering, in light of what you just shared, Evan, and what we've talked about before with student mental health and just their their ability to be successful, is there any, and also the amount of online classes and also asynchronous online classes that they are taking now and also will be taking this coming semester, is there anything else that we can do as faculty to encourage and train our students to develop these habits to be successful in, particularly in asynchronous online classes? And I know that TLC has some information on that, just good habits to do that, to be successful in asynchronous online classes. But is there more? Is there some kind of mini module that we could direct our students to, and also as advisors? Are there any, I guess I'm just asking if there are any thoughts or ideas or things that I may not be aware of and others may not be aware of, that we can direct our students to be, particularly to be successful in online classes, and especially asynchronous online classes, which I think require even more self-discipline, organizational skills, time management, and all of that. So I don't know if from TLC or if anybody can say something about that.
Yeah, I'd like, oh, sorry.
I was going to turn it over to you anyway. Thanks. That's a great question. You're absolutely right. It's been a problem area all semester.
Absolutely. I mean, we see engagement as such a critical component right now, and this is something that we're going to be talking about in our Winter Institutes. Specifically, though, in terms of what you're suggesting, there is a module that was created that has been used in some of the 191 courses, but there have been other course shells as well, where we basically talk about what does it take to be successful in an online course. and we can share that. We've tried to share it a few different ways, but I think that the best thing for us to do will be to get that up on our website in case others want to include that in their course shells. But then we can also walk through that during our institutes where we talk about communication. And your point is well taken, asynchronous. What's been interesting for us is that our typical online learners love asynchronous, but they chose that route and their circumstances are different. And so now we've been put into a completely different environment where we are trying to create those best experiences to help the students engage and keep on task and stay disciplined. So we will continue to weave that message through all of our online resources. There's a lot out there, but we're doing our best to try to get people to the content that's going to be most relevant to the students. So I think, again, just to reiterate, we'll post how to get that information into your course shells so that you can make that available.
And Heiko, what we hear anecdotally is that it's even in asynchronous courses, if the professor can meet with the students, have office hours where there's actual face-to-face, Zoom to Zoom interaction, it really is helpful. That if a student doesn't see their professor in any kind of real time, it adds to their stress level.
Yeah, thank you for those answers and comments. So I'll be looking for that to put into the learning module. Thank you.
Other questions?
It's Frankie Tack. Let's see, I need to
You should raise your hand, Frankie.
Sorry, there I go.
Yep, there you go. Okay, and then which college you're from?
Yeah, Frankie Tack, College of Ed and Human Services. And I was just wondering, just to jump on, I know this isn't necessarily the business of Senate, but as long as we're talking about this issue, one of the challenges I've had is getting students to come to Zoom office hours. And I have a small cluster of students that will regularly attend, and they're generally the best students. And I've put out a variety of stimulators to say, hey, this is the kind of things you can get if you come, and what we're talking about, and it'll really help you. Trust me, come just once. And the majority of students don't come. So I'm just wondering if there's any feedback on that, or if there's some tools that maybe could help with that.
Yeah, it's a good point, Frankie. I mean, one thing we've seen is there's a big difference between what parents and students say they want and then what they actually do as far as synchronous opportunities and even on-campus opportunities. For those of you who know, in hybrid classes, many students just sort of stop going if they have that opportunity and they attend online. So, the question is, how do we get them to engage even though they have the option to be online? And I'm not sure we have a great answer for that issue yet. We'd love to see every student who is able to come to class, but a lot of times when we give people the opportunity or have, synchronous office hours or even, meetings or synchronous lectures, the opportunities aren't taken advantage of. So there is a disconnect there. It's not just us. I hear the same disconnect from every other school I talk to between what sort of students are saying they want and then what they actually do. So it's not a great answer, but I would just say we're in a strong majority with these types of issues.
Thank you.
There is one comment in the chat from Ednelson Bernardes, and he asks, do we have a contingency plan in case the enrollment does not change?
Ed, do you mean a budget contingency plan?
Contingency plans in general. So budget, of course, would be the first one.
Yeah, well, let me answer that. This is Gordon speaking. The answer is that we have a number of different contingencies that we're looking at, this is, I tell everyone, this is a 1,000-piece puzzle that we get a new one every day. So we don't know what we don't know. We also know that it's a very tumultuous time, and a number of things are dependent. One is that I talked about was the stimulus package, which is forthcoming. That would be of immense help. The second, obviously, is where the progress we can make with state government in this time. But I think we all recognize that this is a very challenging time for students and their families, as it is for us. I think everyone is fatigued. I think that's the only way to really describe it. And so, as we take a look at these issues, I think right now people are just glad to be home. Maybe even though they're hanging out in their parents' basement and their parents are there, at least they're having some respite from some of the things that are going on. And of course, they'll be finishing their work this week. I suspect that some of them are going to be a number of different areas that will impact this. One will be, some students will just say, hey, look, I want to have a collegiate experience, and I'm going to wait until university gets back having that kind of experience. I'm going to take a gap semester. I think that's number one. Number two, I think there are going to be some who just said, I had such a horrible experience. I'm not quite certain whether college/university is for me right now. I might need to take just a little time off in terms of my own thinking. The third is that we don't know the dynamics of whether or not they'll get to the registration trough on time. But we're working hard at it, and we're making progress, as you can see. So I think that's important. The answer is yes, we do have contingency plans, and we're all going to participate, whatever those contingency plans are. We're trying to make it the least draconian of the choices we make. But right now, and the provost will be talking about this, right now we really have to take a look at programs that create enrollment, the programs that are no longer relevant to this university. We are going to have to engage in program elimination and consolidation and creation. And we just say that again, because there's a new world out there. We're going to have to think differently about how we deliver our teaching and learning, and how we interact with our various communities. And obviously, we're going to have to take a look at at many of the things that we do that may be less relevant to the central core mission of the university, and just decide that we may have to eliminate them. Now, we can look at it from two ways. One is that you can think about it as temporary. I think that the real issue for us as a university is not to think about anything temporary, but for us to make decisions which are really in the best interest in the long term. So the ultimate issue we face under any circumstance, no matter where enrollment is or anything else, is how do we increase quality and decrease costs? And it's that simple. And we're going to have to increase our quality to be able to remain competitive, to remain an R1 university, to increase all the things we're doing in terms of teaching, learning, our research, but we're going to have to decrease our costs. And that will happen no matter what. And the question is, how do we accelerate that? How do we meet the needs immediately? But this notion of doing something across the board, of saying, oh, we're going to treat everyone like McDonald's hamburgers, we're going to treat everyone like marmalade, we won't do that. Because in the end, we have faculty, staff, students who came here for very particular reasons, and we want to enhance those opportunities while at the same time taking a look at those things that may no longer be in the best interest structurally or economically for the university. Tough message, important message, but we have no choice. And it has come to that. It's come to that time. This pandemic is once in a lifetime issue. I hope. Certainly, I hope it's a once in a lifetime for me. But saying that, I also can say that that this is a moment that will trigger the future for higher education. I talked today to the head of the Association of Governing Boards. This is the reality. 1,000 institutions will close or consolidate, in my view. A number of institutions are going to be survivors. They're going to try to hang on, but that means that they're going to hang on by just doing everything they possibly can to open the doors the next day, but certainly not do anything supportive and creative. And then there are going to be the few institutions that thrive, and they're going to be the ones who make the kind of decisions we need to make to put ourselves in a position that no matter what comes our way, no matter what pandemic is upon us, no matter what kind of circumstances prevail, that we are in the driver's seat. We now have to control our own destiny because no one else is going to control it for us. So the answer to your question, yes, we have all sorts of contingencies, but none of them are pretty, but most of them will make us better. And that's what we need to be thinking about right now.
Thank you, President Gay. Insightful, very insightful points.
Thank you.
Okay, just one more question because we do need to move on. So I see that Parviz Famari has it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everything that everyone is doing in these trying times. I just want to say that I like to see a vaccine plan on January presentation. I know it's coming through the governor's office, and I know President Gee and administration have a good relationship with the governor and governor office. And I think vaccine plan, and if our student, not me, if our students are first in line, I think it's gonna have a good effect on our spring educational experience. Thank you.
Yeah, I let me just add to that. I think that that as fast as we can get our university community vaccinated, I think that will be a pressure valve that will be released. I think for families, I think for everyone. I think if we can get back to some form of normal, and we may have to take a look at just taking a little bit of a higher risk and have more of our classes on campus other than the ones we're planning right now. We may, it's that kind of a balance that we don't know every day exactly where we are. But I agree with you. Now, we're very fortunate to have a major American medical center in the center of our campus. Secondly of all, I think that we can make a very strong case for the economic vitality of the university as it impacts the state. So a number of things. So certainly, if I can hijack a truck or two full of Moderna's vaccine, I'll do it, and then we'll all get one. But we're working hard on that, and we know that that's an important element of where we are. The sooner we can return to not having to socially distance, and that we can have an opportunity to take off our mask and talk directly to our students, the faster we will be successful and be able to do what we are all trained to do. That does not negate, by the way, let me just say, my previous speech, which is the fact that under any circumstance, we will increase our quality and we will decrease our costs. We have no choice but to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to my report. Since the last time we've met, I've gotten a little bit of feedback on the statement on COVID-19 and shared governance, and that was presented at the November meeting. But from what I've heard, people have said that it did offer some clarity, especially on modality. So, moving courses online in the short term. But if you have any additional feedback on that document, please send that along to me. Also, since Senate last met, the past chair, Emily Murphy, and I met with Tracy Beckley about the possibility of creating a new Senate committee focused on academic technology. And the goal of this committee would be to address classroom technology needs and concerns and advise both the TLC and ITS. So there does seem to be a need for this kind of committee work to happen, especially since at several of our past meetings, questions about our learning management system. They've kind of come up, and as have issues that the ad hoc committee is focusing on, looking at third-party tools. So it just seems that as we implement kind of more technologies in our classroom and do more online, that we need to provide regular input to the TLC and ITS. So you can expect a motion in the spring to create a new Senate committee. So other things I have to report: Ian Harmon, and who's also a faculty senator, and Emily Feidelman with the libraries have graciously offered their information management expertise to help better structure some of the university's web content, especially the COVID-19 facts page. So we have a meeting with UR representatives this week to get that work started. The Student Government Association reached out to me and to Tian Hawkins. For those of you who don't know, Tian is the clinical director of Caruth. And SGA asked during that conversation if some syllabus language about Caruth could be provided. And so the Caruth folks are currently working on that language and should have it drafted before the spring semester begins. So this won't be a policy statement, because our syllabus or rather, it won't be a syllabus statement that exists on our current syllabus page, because those are policy statements, and this really isn't a policy statement, but it's language that you can include. So as soon as that's ready, I'll send it out to the faculty listserv, and I can also make sure that all chairs get that language so that they can pass it along to anybody who's teaching. I'm also working with Office of the Provost and the TLC and Chambers College Senator Suzanne Gosden Kitchen to organize a faculty panel on classroom engagement. And so this would be in addition to the institute that the TLC is offering, and it would actually kind of be a companion to the TLC offering. So the panel, which will be about an hour long, will focus on defining classroom engagement, identifying challenges to engagement. So not unlike some of the things that folks have pointed to at this Senate meeting, and then finding workable solutions in online and in-person teaching, especially now. So we're hoping to hold the panel around the same time in the week before the spring semester begins, but more information about that panel is forthcoming. Finally, a couple of senators have asked me to share a reminder about ESCIs and what happens if you get a student comment that is harassment. So if you do receive any harassing comments on your ESCIs, there is a process to get those comments redacted from your files. So the first step would be reporting the objectionable content to student conduct. And then student conduct would examine the content. And if they find that the comment violates the student code of conduct, then the conduct office will contact ITS and to identify the student and also to ensure that the offending comment or comments do not appear on your ESCI reports in digital measures. So the last reminder is about spring presenters. So Rob Alsop will coming to the Senate meeting in January to talk about the new legislative agenda and to give us a budget update. And I can also ask him to speak to Parviz's question about the vaccine and the distribution of the vaccine. And then Karen Diaz is coming to Senate in February to talk about the library's new vendor policy. So that concludes my report. Are there any questions for me? Okay. Hearing no questions, we will move on to the curriculum committee report. So Jennifer, are you ready?
Yeah, I have 5 items for approval that were distributed with the agenda. So the new courses report is Annex 1, course changes Annex 2, capstone courses, Annex 3. And then there are 2 new programs for approval, a Bachelor of Science in Data Science, as well as a Bachelor of Integrated Studies. So I'm happy to take any questions on those.
Are there any questions on the annexes? Or those annexes? Okay, so we will combine the 5 for approval items into a single votable measure. So all those in favor of approving Annex 1, Annex 2, Annex 3, and the new program in data science and the new program in integrated studies, please raise your hand. The votes will be recorded in that in the sidebar in the chat. In just a moment, I'm giving folks the opportunity to vote. Okay, I'm going to call time. So if you haven't voted, please don't, so that we can get an accurate count. Do you see the yay votes, Dave or Emily? 78 when Natalie called time. Okay. Julie, can you clear the hands? Great. Are there any no votes? Any opposed? Please raise your hand. Okay, no opposed. The committee also has one for information item, right?
Right, that's grad programs approved by grad council. So there was a new certificate as well as an MS program in petroleum data analytics and a change to the master's in speech language pathology.
Are there any questions about that item, Annex 4? Okay, moving on. Next, we'll hear from General Education Foundations Committee Chair, Lisa DiBartolomeo.
If there's, I feel like I'm talking in a stadium. No report.
That's easy enough. Okay, so next we'll hear from the proxy for the Committee on Committees. The membership constituencies report. Is Anne-Marie, are you speaking for the Committee on Committees?
I'm speaking for.
Oh, there you are. Look,
no
you're
proxy
back.
necessary.
Yay.
Thanks for having me back. The Committee on Committees continues to make substitutions and fill vacancies as necessary, including the one in Annex 5, which identifies a new chair-elect for the Inclusion and Diversity Committee. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions on Annex 5? Okay. All those in favor of approving Annex 5, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to call time. Okay. So 80 yes votes to approve Annex 5. Could you clear the hands, Julie? Any opposed? Please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any opposed. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Michael. Next, we have a report from the Teaching and Assessment Committee. Jessica Vanderhoff, are you ready?
Yes, Natalie, thank you. The Teaching and Assessment Committee has 2 items for approval and 1 item for information, and then 1 additional comment. I assume that we should probably take these items one by one.
Yes.
So the first Annex 6, as presented with the agenda, just proposes a few minor changes to the SEI dashboard regarding how often SEI reports are archived. And then the other is the frequency or timing of the SEI reports generated by ITS, specifically so that ITS generates them twice per semester, one around midterm when the 8-week courses are locked, and then one as normal at the conclusion of the traditional 16-week semester. And I'm happy to take any questions about those minor changes to the dashboard or to the frequency of the reports.
Okay, are there, there's some feedback there. Are there any questions about Annex 6 or comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving Annex 6, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to call time. Okay. Can you, Julie, can you clear the hands? Any opposed? Please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any opposed. Okay, so that annex passes. And next, Jessica?
Yes. So circling back to the long-standing topic of plus-minus grades, the Teaching and Assessment Committee was tasked with investigating the faculty's ability to do away with plus-minus grades. As the Senate is aware, while instructors have the ability to assign plus-minus grades and star, only the letter grade is used by the registrar to calculate our students' GPAs. Given that the plus-minus grades are symbolic rather than a true numeric value in the calculation of the GPA, TACO proposes that the university registrar remove the option of assigning plus-minus grades in the student information system, with the exception of any program that requires plus-minus grades for, accreditation purposes or other requirements for their programs. So Annex 7 provides additional history of the Senate's conversations surrounding plus-minus grades, along with the full resolution.
Are there any questions or points of discussion for Annex 7? Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
I don't know if I have an echo this time. Hopefully not. So I had a couple of questions about the resolution. The 4th point, whereas Student Government Association has withdrawn its original support for this proposal, was any additional student input sought? Did we confer with SGA? Did we ask any student representatives? Are there any student representatives who said, sure, it's purely symbolic, we don't need them, we don't want them? That's my first question.
So Lisa, there was a comment that Natalie received over the weekend from SGA that maybe Natalie can share. With regard to Taco, this was one of those agenda items that kind of got lost in the shuffle of COVID. So this was actually a matter that was voted on by the Taco membership of academic year 2019-2020. It happened late in the spring. And then obviously with our movement or our transition to online and how full the Senate meetings were for the May and June meeting, it didn't make it back to the full Senate during that academic year. And so it was brought back to my attention by a faculty member this fall. So just to give you that context. So no, we did not seek out any additional information from the SGA, but Natalie does have the one comment from the students. Natalie, can you share that?
Yeah. So that email is from Chase Riggs, who's the student body president. Let me see if I can copy and paste it and put it in the chat. Sometimes I don't have any luck with this, and sometimes I think it's because of the two different browsers. So let me see if I can share my screen. I mean, basically it says, and you can see all the stuff. Basically, he asks if, Chase asks if students were consulted. So along the lines of your question, and I don't know if there was a student representative on Taco last year. Is Ashley here?
We did not have anyone join us regularly.
Got it. Okay. I know that student government has been involved in that committee or on that committee in the past, but I wasn't sure if there was anybody in regular attendance last year. So Chase just asked, again, whether any input from students had been received and or sought out, and that he says he's also interested in learning if removing the plus minus grades, even though it doesn't currently have numeric weight, will affect students' competitiveness in applying to graduate schools within the system. So what I told Chase was, I'll stop sharing. What I told him was that if the resolution passed, what he could do is offer any a comment or concern to the provost office. So share any comments or concerns with the provost office. And I also informed him that whatever we decide is a recommendation, and ultimately it's up to the provost office to implement the plus minus grades, whether they're rescinded or not. I see lots of questions. Sorry, I'm talking and so I see a couple of hands. So Trisha Phillips, Trisha, you're first.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I teach a lot of pre-law students, and the law students say that pluses and minuses are factored into their law school applications. That is, when law schools calculate composite GPAs, they will allow students to include pluses and minuses. So students who have earned a high A or a high B really appreciate the opportunity to get that because it benefits them when applying to professional school. Did the TACO committee consider this in recommending that we remove the possibility of plus and minus grades?
So Trisha, this has a very long history that precedes my time in TACO. I think that Lena is one of our guests. I don't know if she gave a very comprehensive presentation on all of this last year or the year before, if my memory serves me correctly. And I don't know if Lena is on to provide some of that historical context and the comprehensive presentation that she offered to Senate then.
I don't think I see her.
She's in the guests.
Oh.
I don't know if she's actively.
Sorry, I had to become a person who could show myself and speak. So this does have a long history. So back in 2016, an ad hoc work group, which included faculty senate, provost office, and SGA representation, looked at plus minus grading across the board. And what we found at that time was about 2/3 of our peers used plus minus grading and counted it in GPA calculation. About 1/3 did not use it or count it in GPA calculation. As far as we could tell, we were alone, at least based on that review, in having plus minuses on the transcript and yet not counting them in the GPA calculation. That part of that history and why that work group started was really an SGA request to start counting them, because some students, in particular high achieving students applying to professional or graduate school, wanted to see that reflected on their transcript GPA. As we were going through that process, realized that it was going to hurt a lot of students. And so they rescinded their request to have that change even before we had finished the review. What that small group ended up presenting to Faculty Senate again in 2016 were two options. Leave the GPAs on the transcript and yet count them in the calculations, or remove them entirely. At that point, Faculty Senate voted to recommend counting them. And then after that, and there are probably other people who can jump in, running some of those numbers made it clear that it was going to hurt some students, going to hurt scholarships. There were two different sets of years where data was looked at. When we looked at it back in 2016, there was a split. It was going to help a certain subset of students and it was going to harm other students, but a lot of students actually, their GPAs really weren't going to change that much. So yes, in a roundabout way. Also keep in mind, for the students who earned low A's and low B's, it's going to make their GPA worse if they are recalculated for professional programs. Any program that uses a centralized application service is probably recalculating that GPA. So if you're applying to law school, medical school, dental school, pharmacy school, PT school, that GPA is going to get recalculated. And the feeling, as I understand it, it's that it's better for the GPAs to match and be reflective of how the institution counts it, so the student can be clear about what their GPA is when they apply. That's it.
Thank you, Lena. Okay, next, Megan. Go ahead. Megan Willard.
Oh, I think I had my hand raised accidentally. I unraised it.
Okay, got it.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, Parvez, it's your turn. You're up.
Oh, me? Yeah, okay, thank you. Parvez Famuri from Statler College. This goes before when I was the Faculty Senate Chair, and that was 2006. So this is a very important issue to everybody, obviously, and there is no urgency right now, is there? If there is no urgency, I would recommend to table this till we have more time face to face, and because not only for us and our student, there is a lot of stuff that goes with the registration office too, that they have to work with. So if you would like, if the body would like, I would be more than happy to entertain or to move a motion to table this till next fall. If the chair of the committee tells me that there is no urgency right now.
I need help from my parliamentarians. So if there's a move to a motion to table the issue, how do I proceed next?
It is to table it till next fall.
So that's the motion, right? So,
Yes,
so
okay, yes, I move to table, well, no, I like to hear from the chair of the committee that, is there any urgency?
So again, obviously just given the time frame with which I'm reporting, you know, I'm reporting last year's tacos vote. So obviously with that said, there was no urgency. Again, it was brought back to my attention just because a faculty member did revisit the meeting minutes of the February 2020 meeting and asked, you know, what had come about of that conversation. So no, from my point of view, there is no urgency.
So I move to table this until next fall 2021.
Hold on one second. We're giving the parliamentarian permission to address us. So it's Matt Totolo. Julie, can you give him permission to speak and such?
I'm sorry, what's the name again?
Matt Totolo, Matthew Totolo.
Yep. I'm moving him over now.
Okay, Matt, can you speak?
Yeah, I think can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so it just needs a second and a vote.
Okay.
Obviously you discuss first if it's a motion. So if it's seconded, you discuss it and then you vote on it.
Okay. So so is there a second to the motion to table?
Second.
Okay, I saw it. Thank you. And I see another second in the chat. Okay. So now discussion. Are there questions or comments about tabling the issue? I think I'm going to clear hands because some of the hands are from before Parviz offered his motion. So if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, Linda, go ahead. Linda Davis. No, never mind. Emily Murphy, go ahead.
So this is something that, Lena pointed out, and that this has been an issue that we've been discussing in Faculty Senate for 5 years. So I feel like that we shouldn't table it. We should just go ahead and make a vote to whether or not Faculty Senate supports Taco's position.
Okay. Matt, do I need to do anything?
No, just wait for the discussion to end and then it goes to a vote.
Okay, Frankie Tack, please go ahead.
Frankie Tack, College of Education, Human Services. I'm in my 4th year here, and this has been a great confusion since I landed here for me as an instructor. And I'm personally clear on the policy, but it's very confusing for students. And then it becomes confusing whether we need to put this in our syllabi or not. And then when we do, students don't have clarity from semester to semester about what it means and what the impact is for them. It seems to me, I haven't been on Senate. I've only peripherally followed this issue, but it seems to me that at this point, we really need to make a decision. The students didn't support it before. So if we seek more student input, they're either going to support it or continue to not support it. It sounds to me like there've been a good look at the metrics on who it would hurt, who it would help, and the ability is still there for the ones that require it. So I would be interested in moving this forward.
Okay, thank you, Frankie. Dave Hauser, you're next.
Yeah, I just agree that I don't know that there's any benefit to pushing this off until the fall. We've talked about this every year the Senate's been around, and I think we're capable of making a decision and making a recommendation to the Provost's office today.
Lisa D, you're next.
So just because we can do something doesn't mean that we have to. I think that the fact that we haven't necessarily talked to students about their feelings on this in this round strongly suggest that we should do that before we go any further. It's also important to keep in mind that what this resolution is proposing is not saying we have to count the pluses and the minuses from here on out. It's just this resolution is separate from that, right? We've already decided we're not going to count the pluses and minuses. What this resolution is saying, let's just no longer have them at all. So I think it's important to separate the two. One has already been decided, one has yet to be decided. So I've noticed some of the chat questions have been, I thought it would be overwhelmingly negative for students to keep the plus and minus. Again, the negative effect is only if we count the plus or minus into the GPA.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, Trisha Phillips, you're next.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the applications to professional school. And I've always just wanted to do whatever I could to give our high achieving students a better chance in admission to graduate and professional school, if that's where they want to go. And I know that in many cases they are competing against students from other schools who do issue pluses and minuses. And so if they've earned high grades, that is, if they've earned an A+ rather than an A, or a B+ rather than a B, it disadvantages them in their graduate school application to not have that counted in their composite GPA, as the graduate school would count it, not as WVU would calculate their grade.
Okay, thank you, Trisha. Rose Casey, I see your hand. You're next.
Sorry, I agree with Trisha. When I write reference letters, I always identify the grades, including the pluses. They make a difference. It seems complicated to me. It's my first year on Faculty Senate, sure, but it seems a really thorny issue. I would be really upset if as a professor, if I were not allowed to give pluses or minuses to my students anymore. They actually are really helpful educationally. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So Dave, this is your, well, actually this would be your first time speaking to the motion to table. Nope, second time. Okay, so this will be your second time. And so then you're, all right, go for it.
Correct. And so my comment is we're voting on a motion to table, not voting whether or not we're pushing forward to do pluses and minuses. So we should be discussing whether we want to make the decision now or not, and then we can save the discussion about whether this is a good idea for the next debate.
Okay. Julie, can you clear hands? So I think we're ready to vote on the motion to table. So Parviz, your motion was to table the issue until the fall, correct? To get information from students, gather the things that.
No, just to fall.
Just to fall. Just
This is
table
not
the information.
urgent.
Okay.
We're on Zoom meeting. I hope in fall we come together as face to face, because this is has a lot of implication for a lot of people.
Okay. So, so the motion on the floor is to table the vote until fall. All those in favor of tabling the vote until fall, please raise your hand.
Natalie, don't forget to ask for abstentions.
Okay. Rose, the motion on the floor is to table the issue until fall. Okay, I'm calling time. Okay. 53 to table the motion until fall. Can you clear the hands, please, Julie? Okay, any opposed to tabling? Okay, I'm calling time. Okay, 27 opposed. And Julie, can you clear hands? And are there any abstentions? Okay, I'm calling time. It looks like there's just one abstention. Okay, so Matt, according to votes, what does that mean? 53 yes votes to table. Does that mean
Motion carries, yep.
motion carries? Okay, motion carries. The issue to get rid of the ability to assign plus minus grades is tabled until fall. Okay, Taco, do you have any other
Yes, we do.
items to discuss?
So we have one item for information, which is Annex 8, which is the summary of the fall pilot of the early semester teaching assessment. And I'm happy to field any questions about that assessment project.
Okay, questions for Jessica regarding Annex 8? Okay, no questions. And then
And I have one other couple words that I would like to share.
Just 1 second. Somebody posted
sure.
in the chat about the teaching assessment. Do you see it? Will you be doing it in the spring?
Oh, yes. Yes, we will be. It will still be a pilot. It will still be opt-in. And we will be offering it 2 different, what ITS calls projects, so that we can accommodate both the 16-week semester sessions as well as the 8-week semester sessions. So more information will be coming your way shortly after the new year regarding the calendar and when you'll be able to opt in and customize both your survey window as well as customize 2 selectable questions, or 2, one open-ended question and one Likert scale question to your liking.
And then it looks like you've got a couple of other comments regarding it being helpful.
Yes, thank you.
And then remember to include the change in language we'd suggested in the previous meeting, the change in language from the last meeting.
Okay. Any other comments?
Okay, Jessica.
Okay, so then just, I would just like to share a few words about the ESCI video that was distributed to the university community on November 20th. And so just to provide some information, some context. So Taco does appreciate the feedback on the ESCI video it has received from members of the university community, particularly the concerns brought forward by the Faculty Senate's Inclusion and Diversity Committee. First, we would like to sincerely apologize for any hurt that this video has caused. The video was a good faith effort to explain the importance of SEIs to improve response rates, provide tips for offering productive and professional feedback to improve the quality of feedback instructors receive, and last, to demonstrate the influence implicit bias has on perceptions and evaluations. 2 years ago, when Taco was alerted to the fact that instructors were receiving unprofessional and sometimes hateful student feedback, the committee took steps to improve the system. As Natalie mentioned earlier, the first was to work on a way to allow instructors to redact SEIs from their files. And then the second was to hold students accountable for what they said. As a result, the reporting system was designed with the Office of Student Conduct. The video was to provide an opportunity to share with students why they complete SEIs, ways to share feedback, and address implicit bias. We had initially planned to create a recording on campus with members of our student and faculty bodies. COVID disrupted that plan, and rather than let the project stall, we decided to pursue the video using existing animation software. The software was upgraded to include more diversity, but was still limited by the use of stock images. While the subgroup of TACO who developed the video was aware of some of these limitations noted by our colleagues, we thought the overall message outweighed those limitations. But the strong reaction to the video from our colleagues has given us pause. And in response to these concerns, on Thursday, December 3rd, TACO passed a motion to make the ESCI video unavailable for public access. And as of Friday evening, the video has been taken down. In January, TACO will discuss next steps for this project. And so with that said, Natalie, I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the ESCI video on providing constructive feedback.
Okay, I see a hand. Carrie Valentine. Go ahead, Carrie.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I haven't talked for a while. Thank you, Natalie. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Valentine, the chair of the Inclusion and Diversity Committee. And I just want to make an announcement that our committee has requested a report and presentation from the Office of the Provost regarding teacher evaluation in order for the Faculty Senate at large to review and offer comment at the January 11th Faculty Senate meeting. This report and presentation would outline the office's latest thinking on teacher evaluation, methods under consideration, and a timeline for advancing this work. While student evaluations of instruction, including the mandated standard SEIs, comprise only one form of evaluation that can be used to assess teacher effectiveness, it is still the only one that WVU has required. The consequences of the current position disproportionately impact women and minoritized instructors. We particularly want to know how the Provost Office plans to enlarge the evaluation process beyond simply input from students to decrease the likelihood that underrepresented or BIPOC faculty experience biased results. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. And so the Office of the Provost, the folks, probably Presho, will be sharing information in January about ESEIs and that kind of plans moving forward on an evaluation. Okay, I see Dave Hauser has his hand up. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to note that the evaluation process has always been kind of jointly owned by Senate and the Provost Office. So I'm a little apprehensive about asking the Provost Office solely to report back on sort of what they're thinking for the future and what they might like to do. Again, it's always been a sort of joint project between Senate and the Provost Office to sort of manage whatever the teacher evaluation system is, whether it's SEIs or something beyond that. So I don't want to give the impression that we're hoping for the provost to come and tell us what we should or should not do. This should be something that is jointly put together and moved forward.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a possibility for this to be joint, I think, you know, the committee and I would assume the larger Faculty Senate body would like to see that collaboration as well.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I think the plan was to include TACO. I mean, it's certainly to include the initiatives, but the report was going to come out of the Provost Office. But I hear you in that in saying that it should be a kind of a joint endeavor. Are there other questions or comments? Okay.
That's all I had.
I'm sorry.
I said that's all TACO has.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is a report from Representative of the State Government, Roy Nutter. Roy, are you ready?
I am Roy Nutter, Statler College, and your representative of state government and the State Advisory Council of Faculty. Higher Education Policy Commission met online, I want to say in Charleston, on November 20th. And ACF also met on November 20th. Was noted by HEPC that legislature is now entirely Republican, as I understand it. Republican Senate, Republican House, and a Republican governor, which is probably going to make things very interesting. The other pieces of this kind of support some of the things we've been talking about. Enrollment statewide is down about 4% in the four-year schools. And I notice in the two-year schools, it's down about 7% across state. There's some worry about spring enrollment and probably more worry about fall enrollment. And a couple of things kind of trigger that. One is Promise Scholarship applications, according to HEPC, are down 81%. Down 81%. And FAFSA numbers currently are down, and I heard them say in the state 17%, and I just read nationwide they're down 17%. So I'm not sure that having our high school kids not getting plunged toward college is helping us a lot. That concludes my report. Nathalie?
There are questions for Roy? I have a question. Roy, what are they attributing the Promise Scholarship numbers to?
Very good question. Nobody has said that. I'm assuming that the high school counselors probably don't have the same contact with their students, but that's my assumption. And
sure.
No comment from them.
And Natalie, I think it's almost entirely due to the fact that our kids are floating and they don't have access to their counselors. So they don't know quite what to do. You know, this is, there's all sorts of unintended consequences here, and we're just trying to figure it out ourselves.
Yeah, testing's a big factor as well, Natalie, that someone mentioned that in the chat as well. They just haven't been able to give a lot of standardized tests yet. And since you need a standardized test score to qualify for Promise, people seem to be waiting. That's true probably with applications to higher education as well.
Thanks. Any other questions for Roy? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our next order of business, which is a Board of Governors report from Stan Heilman. Stan, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. The board has not met since our last Faculty Senate meeting, so there really is no update. The next board meeting will be December 18th.
That was easy.
Yes, it was.
Okay. So then we will move on to the next item. Is there any new business? Okay, no new business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, very good. Well, we're all done. Thanks, everybody. I hope you all have a restful break. I think everyone deserves it.